YouTube is still by far the best platform for video creators. YouTube, I think, is more and more turning into the ultimate distribution tool for video. If you take a look at all the major shows, for example, they often release at least clips of their shows, basically these small content pieces they would offer in a bigger show, for example, and they just release them to YouTube now. And of course, this brings YouTube money, but also YouTube needs to host all this different stuff and also allows millions and billions of people on this planet to basically stream and upload whatever they want. And on the creator side, of course, there is TikTok, for example, but TikTok just isn't really a good tool, actually. You can only use all the editing tools if you are using the app. And if you are using the app, what TikTok obviously tries to turn you into is also a consumer. So when I tried to record TikToks and I actually kind of began making videos on TikTok, even though I wanted kind of to already produce for YouTube, but I just tried out TikTok and this actually got me into the habit of making videos because they could be shorter. And of course, this gets many people into making videos. But then once you figure out kind of a system to making these videos, once you figure out what you actually want to do in terms of content creation, what YouTube offers then is the tools you actually need. You can use YouTube and schedule, I think, 1 or 2 years even ahead. So this means you could potentially take a single day, record hundreds of shorts, for example, and schedule them for the next year. And you would have one single short for every year. On TikTok, for example, up until a few months back, there was no web upload. Now there is, and maybe it's already a year old, I don't exactly know, but the main thing is that YouTube is a full distribution tool, a full distribution platform, whereas TikTok, for example, is kind of a in-between as of currently. There is now a web upload, but you can only upload for the next 14 days. You only cannot do anything in the web upload, really. Of course, you have kind of the major things, but you have to have the finished file already. And when it comes to distributing content and then also producing content, ultimately, the goal is not, I think, or one of the goals is not to be dependent on one single platform. Why? Because this would mean that if this platform decides that they either change the community guidelines or they just say, you heard the community guidelines and you probably will never really find out which community guideline you exactly heard because they probably won't tell you, and this is all automated because their customer support is just very expensive to run. So therefore, if you are dependent on one single platform, this means that you are dependent on one single platform. And if this is either a part of your income stream or a major part of your income stream, then it is just a very large dependency. Basically, anything could happen. For example, someone could impersonate you and get your account deleted, or all of your accounts deleted if the account is not even the account you own. But just because someone else impersonated you or took your footage and made a video with AI and said something that is considered hate speech, and that gets then all your accounts blocked, or maybe potentially in the future all videos where they recognize your face in. And of course, TikTok, for example, I think it would make sense for TikTok, for example, to already have facial algorithms, which of course they already have, at least in terms of judging how attractive a person is and what ethnicity probably also a person is, and then to distribute content accordingly. So much about TikTok. TikTok is nice. It's an app. It allows you to easily record. It also is a kind of a very good video editing tool. I mean, it even lets you now make AI images, basically. And it's just crazy how much development there was in the last few years in this space. And basically, shorts, as they exist now, didn't exist years ago, didn't exist 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Of course, there were some previous versions of TikTok, and also there was Musical.ly, and even 5 years ago, I think there were already kind of vertical apps. And of course, you could already post videos to Instagram. But the major invention TikTok made was to just have a video feed where you didn't decide anymore what to watch, but you decided by scrolling down, basically, which you already were used to from all the other apps. But now, instead, it was with video. And maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't really possible because most people didn't have the bandwidth and also the mobile devices that were good enough to actually make this a good enough experience. So much about TikTok. So now let's talk about Facebook, which also basically is a video platform with Facebook Watch. This is the, I think, official name. And we also have Instagram TV and of course Instagram Reels. And we also have Facebook Reels. So both of these platforms, both owned by Meta, basically cover both variations, you could say, of video content, at least as of currently. So now there is also this other content that is still TV series, you could say, or movies. And with movies, for example, YouTube also offers now the all-in-one solution. Not now, but has been for years. And this is to also additionally offer movies. And I think what is a major problem actually on YouTube is the fact that these movies, compared to a 10-minute video about something you actually are more likely to be interested in, because there can only be so many movies produced, because movies take millions of dollars of investment. And a YouTube video maybe doesn't. So a YouTube video such as the one you are watching now doesn't take me any additional investment because I already have a phone. Of course, I have to invest my time that I could use otherwise. But if we now are at a state where everybody basically has one of these creational tools in their pocket, which they can use to very easily record video. The only thing you need is actually either natural light or a few lights or the light that is in your apartment. But if everybody, and I'm recording on the internal microphone as of now, can make at least these kind of videos, then what this leads towards is that more and more people actually will be able to make these videos. So therefore, the competition just is bigger and bigger, and the hurdle of entry is lowered and lowered and lowered. So what this now means for YouTube, for example, and also TV series on YouTube, and TV series and films on YouTube, is that they now have to compete with, for example, a Mr. Beast video. If you take a random movie that came out in the last, 2 years, and you see the thumbnail of the movie, so which is basically the movie poster, then the movie poster is usually vertical, not horizontal. So it is not even optimized for this vertical viewing on YouTube, basically. Netflix, for example, already has a different route. They usually have I don't know how many, but 5, 10, 15 different thumbnails that then are targeted specifically to the user. So this means, depending on what a user usually watches, of course, there will be different parts of the movie that would be interesting for this viewer. And so what they do is they portray the movie slightly different, and by just selecting different thumbnails for the movie. So basically different movie posters. And YouTube could also do something similar, but YouTube, as of now, hasn't done something similar. And also what would be just one of the maybe next inventions YouTube could do is to just get rid of the thumbnails altogether. Because the thumbnail system is actually a system that is another hurdle of entry into the content itself. So what do I mean by this? Of course, a thumbnail is maybe a very good proxy for what the video actually looks like. Apart from the fact that you obviously can use and manipulate a thumbnail and make people click on something, even though that's not something they actually would want to watch. So ideally, a thumbnail would basically be an exact preview of the content. But it is not, because it's a picture and the actual thing is a video with audio. And so a thumbnail will only be kind of a very low resolution thing that is actually previewing the main thing. So on YouTube now, for years already, you had these small previews that just play a little bit of the video actually. And in total, I think this already makes more sense, Then the next thing, of course, which also existed for years, is Auto Watch, which is a feature that enables you to just watch and watch without actually selecting things. So basically, YouTube already had this feature implemented. It is just that TikTok just said this is now the forced mode. And therefore, I mean, YouTube already had this format here. Of course, you are now seeing it the other way around. But YouTube already had kind of this format, and then it would just autoplay the next video. So YouTube basically had already the same thing. The only difference TikTok then invented, not the difference TikTok, but the invention or the innovation was that people usually hold their phones like this. And it is not very natural to hold a phone like this. So therefore you have to put it down, and therefore you have to kind of be dedicated to watch. But by kind of penetrating the normal phone usage, because the normal phone usage is just vertical. And by penetrating it with making it accessible, making it also accessible for video, it actually, I think, removed, at least to a certain extent, the hurdle of watching something, because you would have to turn. And of course also the fact that mobile phones get better and better over time and over the last years, and also have more processing power, is contributing to the success, I think, of TikTok. So still, TikTok doesn't offer all of the features you actually would want. Features such as subtitles, for example. Up until a year ago, there was not really a good subtitle feature. I mean, let's talk about what actually future video platform would look like. Ideally, for the consumer, you would have one platform where everybody would distribute their video towards. In terms of competition and in terms of business and just monopoly, of course, this is not optimal, because this means that this platform, for example, could dictate the prices for, on the one side, people that want to play ads, for example, but on the other side also for people who don't want to watch ads. So basically, YouTube Premium could be completely dictated. The price of YouTube Premium could be completely dictated if it was the only video product out there. So now, we don't really want a monopoly, but of course, on a consumer side, a monopoly, apart from the negative effects of being a monopoly, also has the upside that you get one place to watch it all. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if there was actually one place to watch it all the different series? If there wasn't native content you could only watch on Netflix, native content you could only watch on Disney Plus, but if you had just one location where you could watch all content. Of course, there also might be an argument to have actually different platforms, to kind of have a mental separation, for example, from educational content, academic content, and also maybe entertaining content. But of course, this mental separation only exists in our mind and is a spectrum, because what for one person might be something that is educational might for somebody else be something that is more on the entertainment side. And of course, you can also watch entertainment content for education, because maybe you want to actually learn how to do entertainment content, and the other way around. So this is kind of just a mental frame we apply to whether we want to learn or whether we want to be entertained. Facebook also has something very similar to Creator Studio. Not to Creator Studio, but to YouTube Studio. And the name is actually quite nice. It's called Creator Studio, whereas YouTube Studio is just called YouTube Studio. And Creator Studio has its benefits. But I think because of the name change from Facebook, and also because of the fact that Instagram and Facebook are still two different products, and they probably will merge in the future anyway, which they already kind of are, at least on the business side. So in the past, we had Facebook Business Manager that allowed you to kind of target ads and so on. Then Facebook introduced Facebook Watch, and on the other side, on the creator side, Facebook also introduced Creator Studio. Now, Creator Studio allowed you to post videos, also visual content such as images, and also text to both Instagram and Facebook, which is nice. But until recently, you could not even post Reels, even though Reels already existed for up until a year on Facebook, and also on Instagram for I don't know how long. And you still, Instagram, for example, the video platform that is the long form video platform, so IGTV, is still not really accepting different formats of content. Not different formats of content, but different aspect ratios. For example, I figured for quite some time that it would make sense to basically use YouTube as a primary long-form content platform, and then to just copy-paste the content to Facebook Watch, which works, and to Instagram. But now the problem is, I would have to do this separately. Because, I mean, ideally, these platforms would be connected, and they also are connected. It's just up until now, if you cannot post, for example, screen recordings of my phone are not in 9:16, but actually a kind of a different format. And I just cannot post these screen recordings to Instagram. So therefore, I cannot post all the videos, and therefore, in order to keep things simple, I only would post them chronologically from the beginning up until now, and then, of course, update the content. Which now would mean that I couldn't post all the content, but I would have to have a selection. And if I then, maybe 2 years later, would be able to upload the content, then, of course, nobody would be interested in this old content anymore. So therefore, I would have only a subset of the current things I already produced on Facebook Watch. For this reason, I didn't upload basically a single video, at least not for experimental purposes, to Facebook Watch. And the same is true for Instagram. I actually tested it a few times already, and I just deleted it again. Why? Because either I copy all of it or I copy none of it. Because until the strategy is actually thought out, having very small sets that actually are kind of just bad experiments, not necessarily experiments that have gone wrong, but experiments that are just not full, that are just not the same as on YouTube. Until then, it doesn't really make sense to even use this as a platform. So now, also on the creator side, because you now have so many different platforms, that also, of course, is good for creators because it allows you to have different revenue streams, and also it allows you to decrease your dependency on one single platform. And now the problem, obviously, that then is created is that the distribution of the content, that of course you would optimize kind of in a way that you would actually upload your content to multiple platforms, especially if now basically all of the short platforms are 0 from 60 seconds and therefore kind of standardized. Of course, TikTok now also has the option to upload up to 10 minutes of video. So they are trying to get into long form, but it's kind of a thing in between, because if you, for example, have a 30-minute podcast episode, you cannot upload it to TikTok. So therefore, it is kind of still short form, and for this reason, I don't produce videos that are longer than actually 1 minute. For shorts, if it is a long form video, then I can, but it doesn't really make sense, because then I would have to limit either all of my videos to 10 minutes, or I just don't use TikTok for long form content. So now, what would be ideal in terms of what would be ideal for creators? The ideal thing would be that there was a service. Of course, this service cannot really be provided by any of the one platforms, but it needs to be a cross-platform service that allows you to upload one short to this service, and the service would upload the short and adapt the short according to the platform's rules. So, for example, depending on how many characters you can use in the title, depending on how the title feature is actually used on YouTube Shorts, on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on Facebook Reels. Maybe additionally upload your shorts to Thriller. Maybe additionally also to Byte or Clash. It is called now Clash. So you would have additional traffic, you would have additional potential eyeballs on your content without making more content. You would not have to natively adapt your content to the platform, which, by the way, I think is a strategy that is bound to not fail, but bound to lead to less outcome anyway. Because if, for example, I produce natively on TikTok and make duets on TikTok, then of course I don't have the rights to the other side of the video. So if I stitch a video with somebody else, or if I duet a video of somebody else, then I of course don't have the full creative control on the content anymore. Not the full creative control, but I just don't have the rights to this content then anymore. I only have the rights to part of the content. So this content is then basically bound to only exist on TikTok. So this means if you now want to do another platform, the only thing you can do is either now switch to cross-platform content, which you have the rights to. And this, by the way, also is a big problem with music. I mean, if you are using one of these tools that are very nice, where you can use music for the specific platform, then of course, the platform is the one that has the agreements with the music industry. So now if you, and of course the agreements with the music industry TikTok has made with Warner Music, for example, are not the same as YouTube, for example. So now this means, of course, you could potentially create something on TikTok and then just copy paste it to YouTube and hope that YouTube maybe even monetizes it. In the worst case, it disables your account because it is just copyright infringement, because you just used somebody else's song that is not yours. So, I mean, that's just how it is. Of course, YouTube, because it wants to make it easy for creators, has this kind of content ID system, which says that maybe you can, in the future, even split the revenue you earn from a video with the person who made the song you used in your video. Or maybe your video just gets demonetized as of now, and the artist that made the song just gets all of the royalties. Not really the royalties, but the AdSense for the video you made. So, of course, this is not crappy. I wanted to say crappy, but crappy is not really a word I want to use. So maybe let's just say this is suboptimal. Ideally, what you would want as a creator, apart from the service that actually automatically distributes all of the videos to all of the platforms, and you would only have to upload all of the videos to one single platform, which of course then is not really a platform on its own, but of course also could offer a platform on its own. But of course, something like this will never really exist, probably. Why? Because each platform, of course, has interest to keep users and creators only on their platform, which is kind of the reason, for example, TikTok probably invests so much money in the editing tools, in making AI, for example, accessible, AI images accessible for creators, but only, of course, in their app. And the same is true for music. Basically, in the license agreement of every TikTok Reels, not TikTok Reels, TikTok or Facebook Reels and so on, the music you can use that is basically automatically given to you by the catalog that is on Instagram or on TikTok, of course, is something you can only use on the specific platform. Because if you then copy paste it to YouTube, then of course there could be a copyright infringement, which could either, in the worst case, get your account disabled, or maybe disabling the account is not the worst case. It could also get you a lawsuit in the magnitude of millions. But it probably won't, because as of now, so many people that are just unskilled in terms of law and probably don't have any idea what it actually means to copy someone else's content or to use someone else's music in their videos, they are also, of course, incentivized by these platforms to create. So therefore, you have just a lot of basically copyright infringement all the time, and so therefore it is kind of normal that there is copyright infringement all the time. So therefore, what YouTube, for example, does is it just automated this process and therefore just says, okay, this happens all the time, so therefore we create a system in order for them to have an automatic response, which is to give the AdSense to the person who actually created the song, for example. So there is the service you would want as a creator, where you would create your videos independently. So you can use any editor of your choice, any video editor of your choice. Of course, you can also hire a video editor of your choice, but what I mean is a video editing program. And you could also just record videos on your phone. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you have then an output that is a file. Now, of course, if you are on TikTok and if you have used TikTok, it is very easy to record within TikTok. Why? Because TikTok has solved one of the biggest problems you have if you want to record content. And this problem is that you have to store the file somewhere. You have to organize the file somewhere. And now if you, for example, create a 10-minute video and you do multiple takes, then at which point do you decide which take to take? And at which point in time do you decide to throw the other takes into the trash? Or maybe you could potentially use the other takes in the future. Or maybe you recorded B-roll, which you then could use in the future. So thereby you create much more video files than you're actually using in the end. The workaround I have found is to just record on my phone and to pause in between on my camera, which is actually possible. So basically, if I do multiple takes, I record them just in camera. Of course, I cannot switch the takes anymore. I just have a linear process of recording. And of course, this keeps the videos very simple. But this also means that the only way the videos can get better is if I become more engaging. If the things that I say and how I say it becomes more engaging. So basically, if I improve myself, that's basically the only way I can improve the quality of my videos. Now, back to the thing you would actually want. Now, of course, currently, if you want to create cross-platform content, you can either do all of the licensing on your own, which of course adds an additional layer of work to every single video. So this means for every single video you would want to record, you now have additional work. Given the fact that your work time, of course, is constrained, this means you are effectively exchanging video recording time, content production time, or also research time. So time that could go into making the actual content more engaging or better or higher in quality, let's just say. And you have to use this time for backend management more, basically. So you could also say you're effectively lowering the quality of your content over time. The same is true for all the other things you have to do as someone who edits video and not just records or creates video. And this is why so many people can blow up on TikTok, because they don't have to understand video editing, because it's so easy, because it's intuitive, because it's on the app, because you can use music and therefore make your video much more engaging. By just adding music, by just adding filters, you can create multiple different scenarios. You can use green screen. I mean, 10 years ago, when I wanted to do green screen, I just couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't figure out how to do it, even though I was a little bit into video editing. I just couldn't make it work because it was just too difficult for me. Even though it was just too difficult. I tried it in the video editor, it didn't really work, and you could find tutorials for the software I used, but not really good ones, because nobody created tutorials at that point in time and posted them to YouTube, at least not high quality tutorials. But nowadays everything is free. Why? Because the hurdle of entry is also lower. So therefore many more people can create, and for every person that actually creates a paid course, there will be a person that just wants to get your attention and make themselves or make a name of themselves on the internet and create the same thing for free. Now, the second service you as a creator would want is an ultimate video editor where the different elements of the video would actually be smart. So currently we have kind of dumb video editors. The only way to make a video these days is, not the only way, but mostly it works like this. You have dumb video files which are not linked to anything else. So you have the video files, you have to have them usually locally, sometimes maybe on a network storage, and then you combine these different files with images, with also effects and so on, into a different file. But this is a process that is inherently rigged. Why? Because it isn't smart. It isn't smart in any way. If you finish a video file, for the rest of time, you will not ever be able to change this video file anymore. You cannot just change the language on a video file. If you don't want to also remove the music and then add the music again. This is actually quite, how did people, for example, this is something I always ask myself, how did movies get translated into my native language? How was this even possible? Because they just would have to remove the audio, But then if you remove all of the audio, then of course you would have to add the sounds again. Of course, now later I realized that the companies did it themselves, just with the companies, basically a sub-company in the different countries which do translations. But something like this is just not here yet. I mean, MrBeast, for example, has now channels in multiple languages. Wouldn't it be nice if you just choose your language as a consumer on YouTube, and then you could just get the same, you can just still follow MrBeast, but MrBeast now just would be in Spanish, because YouTube would actually offer different audio, different subtitles, not different subtitles, but different audio files, basically, that you would just play alongside the video. So you could just, instead of creating 10 different channels for 10 different languages, if you are translating these, you could just have one channel, and then everybody could just follow MrBeast on this one channel. And the same is obviously true for subtitles. Wouldn't it be nice if YouTube not automatically only generated English, but automatically generated transcripts for basically every video that is uploaded, and also makes it possible, because I mean, Google already has auto-translate, and Google already has this transcription feature. Of course, the reason why they probably are not doing this as of now is probably because the auto-translate has still not a high enough accuracy rate for this to be a working feature. This could mean that if somebody says something and that it then is auto-translated and it then means kind of something else, that YouTube is kind of responsible for this misunderstanding. So therefore, they are probably not using it as of now, and I guess it's something that is planned in the near-term future. But wouldn't it be cool if in the near-term future maybe YouTube offered something that, I mean, of course this could also be creepy, but if I just now spoke in a different language to you, of course this would also mean that YouTube then would have the tools, or the tools in general existed for making content like this with my face, without me actually talking, which could also be nice, but it could also sound very scary to a lot of people, because you can basically create then real life, not real life, obviously, but it seems as if it was the real person recording, whereas in reality it actually wasn't. There are already voices that auto-generate things. Of course, these are optimizations that need to be much better adjusted, and so on and so forth. And also the tone of voice needs to be translated into the different languages, and so on. But wouldn't it be nice if this was something that was possible in the future? So this would be one smart feature. Another smart feature would be to have the entire music catalog of the earth, of all the different labels, and then everybody who wanted to use it could just in one place license the content, or not license the content depending on maybe the platform. So if YouTube, for example, already licensed it for you and it split the revenue accordingly, and so on and so forth, then you wouldn't have to do it on your own. So therefore, it would also be kind of, or part of, a creation system that makes it very easy to create content, such as on YouTube Shorts, such as on TikTok, such as on Facebook and Instagram Reels. So this would also be something that a smart video editor would allow you to do. So basically, what I'm not proposing, it's not that I am proposing it, but I think it would be really smart, would be if you had a video editor, such as on YouTube, for example. YouTube already has a video editor where you can kind of blur people, where you can also add subtitles. But this is only, I think, the beginning of something much bigger. What if you could insert, for example, Wikipedia articles, links to Wikipedia articles? And as of currently, you can have an overlay, for example, but the overlay is only an additional thing on the video. So what if instead of basically taking the video file and then adding something or subtracting something from it, you could basically change the video file real time, because the video file actually wasn't a file anymore, but the video file is something that is generated basically in the moment of the consumer watching. So in the moment of consumer watching, if I say, and this is the Wikipedia article of YouTube, the actual real Wikipedia article would be, so the updated Wikipedia article, not the Wikipedia article I would be able to pull up right now, but if you watch this video 10 years in the future, you could just see the Wikipedia article that was then live. So basically a dynamic linking situation. Of course, now this creates an additional problem that the web is basically unidirectional with its linking. It's because if I link to Wikipedia and 2 years, if I link to a specific website, for example, and in 2 years' time, this website doesn't exist anymore, then you have the problem of a missing Wikipedia article here. And this could be solved by making links bidirectional. So this means instead of me linking to something by implementing a link or inserting a link, for example, visually into a video, it would be bidirectional. So Wikipedia, on the other side, would get basically a notification saying that something now links to Wikipedia. So basically both parties would have knowledge of this link existing. So therefore, if now Wikipedia deletes the article, then Wikipedia could send information back to YouTube in this scenario and say to YouTube, this article was removed due to this and this and this, which then would be smart. It would be a bi-directional way of communication between those two different websites. So what creators actually need, I think, and what also is just, I guess, the future of video editing in general, and maybe also the web in general, is smart links. And not only smart links, but actually smart videos. Videos as of now are just linear things that are files that are uploaded and distributed. But they don't have to be. They could be adjusted. For example, what if in the future you could just insert on YouTube a small correction? Because if I now record something and then this actually changes or I make a mistake when recording this and then I realize this mistake, of course I can change it currently in a locally based video editor. But what I cannot do is 2 years in the future, I cannot just update the video in some way or another because there is just no way to do it. I could only re-upload the video. Of course, there are also other consequences to this. If you, for example, have a very successful video and then you change the title into something else, which already is possible on YouTube, for example, but not possible on TikTok, then of course, this means that you could potentially alter what this is perceived at. And the same is true for editing tweets. I mean, if we can later edit what we actually said, then of course you could, for example, make a very controversial statement and then just take it back, which I guess would be useful for very many scenarios. But what if you instead just posted something completely different and then you changed it? And people would still see the old comments, but it is then the new thing, which of course is true for many Amazon pages where there was a previous product that was maybe good, and then manufacturers or people who sell on Amazon just take the same page and just now have a different product, which confuses everybody, and Amazon still didn't fix this as of now. So what consumers need, apart from one video platform where there is all the content you can possibly watch and a very good user experience, and obviously also a shift in what the algorithms aim for. It shouldn't be short-term engagement anymore. It should be, the algorithms should not, so in my head, I kind of have this distinction I also recently made up more or less specifically for a video, I guess. Whereas the short-term thing you are seeking is basically pleasure, you could say, or also short-term satisfaction. Think of eating food. Brings you a short-term satisfaction. The crappier the food is, the more short-term satisfaction or satiation actually also brings it to you. The same is true for currently watching TikTok. There is a lot of short-term satisfaction, but actually, since it basically crashes your dopamine system, and of course now that is a very big simplification, and the actual neuroscientific background is a little bit more complicated. There seems to be evidence that if you watch something that's highly engaging, the rest of what you do seems less engaging, by comparison. Progress in life is usually pretty slow, And the observation can therefore be kind of hard. And therefore, if you see something where the progress is a lot higher or faster, the progress rate is a lot higher or the progress is faster, then your life just seems to move a lot slower. Therefore, short-term pleasure, mid-term maybe happiness. So this means for maybe days, weeks, months. And long-term, you could call this content. And it is all kind of the same thing we usually call happiness. You don't really want to be long-term happy. You actually want to be long-term content. You also don't really want to have long-term pleasure. So it is all kind of the same thing. The thing you want to be is to be successful in what you set out to do. And currently, watching social media, which is, as I recently heard, is actually not really social anymore. It is just media. Of course, now many more people can create media, but this doesn't make it more social. And also, just in general, everything you could argue apart from the actual relationship you have, where the conversation is usually bi-directional. Almost all of social media is now unidirectional. Why? Because it just works better. Why? Because there are just many more people that are unidirectional and that don't really want to be friends with you, but you can potentially be friends with them, so to speak. If you have 100 friends, these 100 friends will be somewhat interesting. If you now broaden the pool for this conversation, for this unidirectional conversation of a friend telling you about something, to all of the other people that are actually creating content, then of course there is much higher competition, which then selects for the people who are basically producing better content, therefore replacing your uninteresting friends then. So as a consumer, what you would actually want is long-term content. And I think it's pretty obvious that long-term content is not necessarily you watching 4 hours of TikTok every single day, but much more you maybe learning. Or if you just said, okay, you watch 20 hours of TikTok a day, or it's 20 hours of, or 20 minutes of YouTube, or it's 2 hours a week. If you would be able to replace this with, for example, practicing 2 hours of piano a week, which is something that is very practical, I guess, then in a few years' time, you could be a very good piano player. But the TikTok thing is something you probably forget most of it. Why? I think because it is just too hyper-real at this point in time. Because there is just too much information. Actually, when I had phases of me watching TikTok, for example, or watching content a lot, then my brain basically was lagging in processing. I just couldn't process all the different things anymore. And also, of course, the rest of my life seemed to be super boring, and I actually didn't want to do anything anymore. But so going for to the gym, for example, even if it otherwise would be somewhat interesting, just seemed to be less interesting. And it also eventually puts you into the state where then another video, for example, just doesn't give you anything anymore, where you aren't just searching. You are just searching for the dopamine hit, but you cannot even get it anymore from social media because it is just boring at this point in time. Your brain has adapted to this hyper-realism, and you then just don't want to do anything anymore because for your brain, there is no real purpose. Not there is no real purpose, but you are just on a very low dopamine state and you cannot get dopamine anymore. Therefore, you don't want to do anything anymore. So the goal would be for these companies to be actually interested in people turning themselves into better people over time. So instead of YouTube, for example, showing you another cat video that serves no purpose whatsoever, maybe it just serves you, ideally in the future, something that actually makes you better over time. What about learning, for example? What about education? I mean, the thing that often is completely overlooked in all of these discussions is the fact that learning has been institutionalized for many years at this point in time, I guess. And what if we just turned YouTube from YouTube, TikTok, Instagram Reels, what if we just turned up the educational lever. And of course, educational content also has to be entertaining to some extent. And if we, for example, democratized more or less education, which is already currently happening, but of course a major problem is the external missing certification often. If someone like Andrew Huberman speaks about something, that is nice. But if I speak about something, then I just don't have any qualification for many of the things I speak about. So therefore, of course, I'm just taking myself as a bad example right now, which of course you can apply to all the other bad examples also on the internet. But the thing is that ideally you would want to learn something, and you would want to learn as effectively as possible and not just. Of course, there is also an argument to be made that this style, for example, of a friend telling you about something might also be interesting. But when it comes to actually learning mathematics, maybe a vlog, for example, isn't the best idea or the best format to actually turn mathematics into something. Of course, it can be, and of course, it depends on how engaging the video in total is, and so on and so forth. But what if people would just learn a lot more? What if we could introduce a much higher standard of content into content production? What if we had, for example, fact-checking, kind of maybe real-time? Whenever somebody says something that is scientifically proven to be false, then YouTube would just alert you and say this is bullshit. What if then you could also actively implement or insert maybe also into this smart video editor different papers, for example? What if there was a directory of all the research papers on this planet, and you could just insert them directly and then also again solving the right situation? And then the papers would also be updated and so on and so forth. And maybe there would also be commentary on the paper. So if I now reference the paper here, then you could click on this paper, which you already kind of can do with YouTube as of now. But of course, then again, not platform universally. So, of course, getting a standard like this for all the different video platforms will probably never be something that actually is a common interest of all of these different video platforms. But what if, for example, governments all over this world established a project, a mega project, in order to standardize education all around the globe, to standardize degrees, to make degrees completely possible online, to make degrees and PhDs and masters comparable from country to country, and therefore standardize education worldwide. And what if there was a platform, maybe YouTube in the future? Maybe there is a YouTube edition that just gets rid of all the crap and just is educational content. There actually is, I think there is a plan for a YouTube edition where it is just less addictive. For example, often I find myself, it doesn't make sense to allow yourself to watch YouTube, for example, during the day or in the morning, because it just, at least from my experience, it just takes all the will you had to do the things you set out to do. It just sucks it slowly away. So if you, for example, are studying and you want to search a problem, a mathematical problem, and maybe there is an explanation on YouTube, then automatically YouTube recommends you all the other things you also wanted to watch, but you didn't know you wanted to watch them. So here is another cat video. This is just a very bad situation. These companies are putting everybody on this planet actually currently in. And we have to kind of solve this situation. And if it is not in a single platform's interest, maybe we have to kind of find a cross-platform situation. So much about the different platforms for consumers and for creators that already exist, and also that might exist in the future, and how we maybe could strive for something better. Because currently, social media, just saying social media, has already a negative connotation to it, because the overall effect maybe is just net negative.